Hello, and welcome back with the Graduate Historian. In this video, we're going to start our AP World History Review. Again, as always, these are not meant to be a totally comprehensive review, but sort of an overview of the material on the current AP World History test. As always, I highly recommend that you get one of the numerous study guides out there to help prepare for the test, particularly taking the practice exams. But let's begin. Again, our handy-dandy quote here, remember that if the study of history does nothing more than teach us humility, skepticism, and awareness of ourselves, then it has done something useful. Okay, so they picked this time period. I have no idea why. They picked this time period. This is where they start, 1200 to 1450. Some of the big themes here, of course, as you'll see it through all of AP World History, because they cover such a large amount of time in a world survey type of course, is they're looking for changes over time, right? How are you able to spot and articulate the historic trends and the changes over time, particularly in trade, culture, the environment, and political and economic systems, right? The test is very clear that they are big on doing compare and contrast. In this particular time period, they're looking at comparisons of feudal Europe with the Islamic Empire, or feudal Europe with feudal Japan, comparing and contrasting Japan and China at this time, or perhaps the Hindu civilization with the Islamic civilization. This time period is really built around the four major world religions: Buddhism, Christianity, Confucianism, Hinduism, and Islam. They're looking, of course, at what the cultures that practiced it, the basics of the belief system, and of course, more important, the impact of that religion and its practice on the societies where it existed. And a teeny bit of the clash between the civilizations, right? Because this was the time period of the last of the Crusades and other wars between religious groups. The book basically goes across the different regional developments, right? Looking at Europe, Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, East Asia. In particular, at this point, they're looking at the political developments, the cultural developments, and most importantly, the trade and economic developments at this time. As the book says, partly as a byproduct of events such as the Crusade, with the developments of sailing ship technology, navigation technology, and the general increase of trade and the ability to conduct trade. This period of world history is really called sort of the birth of global trade. This is where the book starts talking about the idea of global interactions and interactions across cultures, interactions across economic systems. I would assume that all of these topics would be fair game for an essay question or a document-based question, right? And of course, the other two topics that are potentially to get asked about is, of course, the changes to the environment. How did droughts or other environmental events, disease, right? This was the time of some of the great plagues that swept across Europe. And of course, the changing or not changing role of women in the different societies, comparing and contrasting. Again, I didn't put it on the chart here, slight oversight on my part. There's also the Latin America as well. These are the times of the great Incan empires and Mayan empires in the pre-Columbian era that also had features of trade, culture, and economics. The review guides that I have looked at spent a great time, of course, talking about the Mongol Empire. Of course, the Mongols swept out of the plains of Asia, conquered a great deal of the Islamic Empire, swept into Europe. They were really the probably militarily dominant empire of this age and had a tremendous influence on the rise and fall of the other empires which they conquered. So that's going to be something that I would expect to have may be covered by either a short answer essay or the document-based questions. So remember, the biggest thing that they, looking at here again with the compare and contrast are how does change occur within these societies? Again, are there events, economic events, cultural events, environmental events, or simply the Mongol hordes that cause changes in these societies? But again, not only just change, but also the similarities as well, right? What similarities were there in trade practices, in even economic systems? How was feudalism similar or different in Europe or Japan? So the compare and contrast, the similarities, the change, these are all topics that I would consider fair game for almost any of these high-level ways to view change through this time period of history, right? So as we go through the rest of the economic systems, let's go to the next slide and look at some of the terms. Now, again, this is not meant to be comprehensive. Obviously, in your textbook, anything in bold, as I like to tell my students, is probably something you really want to pay attention to. But also, the bigger terms here, particularly relating to economics, such as feudalism or the Hanseatic League, the fiefdom, you know, what are the relationships of the manor, the lord of the manor, to the peasants, to the fiefs, the fiefdom, the three-field system. You know, how was power shared or not shared, as it were, between nobles, vassals, and peasants, whatever they were called, right? I think throughout all of these societies, however they were labeled, you had basically the nobles, sort of the lesser nobles, and then the peasants, right? And of course, when you get into the Asian cultures, the Chinese dynasties at this time is going to be obviously a topic that could be covered through different types of questions, as well as the shogunate in Japan or the sultanate in Delhi, India, or the other empires such as the Khmer Empire in Southeast Asia, or the Cahokia, if I pronounce that right, which I probably didn't, in the United States. So all of these terms are just offered for your consideration. There's probably many others to look at for this time period. So this is the introduction, sort of to bring everybody up to speed, as it were, on where civilization was at the cusp of the discovery of the New World, which of course is going to have a tremendous effect, tremendous change on all of civilization. But this sort of sets the stage of why was Columbus sailing the ocean blue, right? Part of that is, if you look at the growth in world trade, right, the major trade routes going to the east were dominated by first the Muslims of the Ottoman Empire, and then the Mongols, and then back to the Muslims. So part of the reason that there was a surge in global exploration to the west of Europe was to find a way around these trade routes that went through Islamic and other, not only really long territory, but very hostile territory. It was, in fact, expensive to do business. So they wanted to find a cheaper way to get their goods to market. So as we're going to see in the next chapter, things such as the Mongol Empire and the Ottoman Empire are going to be the drivers of why Christopher Columbus and other explorers set out to the west. So this is our first exercise here in world history. We'll continue on with the beginning of the Age of Exploration and the Rise of Europe in the next video. Thank you for your time.